Welcome to the second series of budget hearings with the Athens-Clarke County Mayor and Commission. Tonight we have members of the commission along with the county staff. The county staff is going to present an overview of the budget, present some answers that they've provided so far from commissioners about the budget. Then we'll go around one at a time among the commission. I'd like each of you to highlight two of your top priorities, your top two priorities. To really hone in our thinking among our colleagues what we can really expect to be desired from each other as we move this forward. And then after that, we can maybe do a little Q&A, and then we'll wrap up with county staff about updates on any more answers to questions that they will be providing. This meeting's not going to last longer than 2 hours. Let's move forward. Go. Take it away, Manager Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. A brief budget overview of the Mayor's recommended budget for FY22. And this budget includes a general fund budget of $148 million, which is about $7.5 million more than the FY21 budget. And I do want to distinguish between the general fund and all other funds. So the general fund services a lot of what we do, but all other funds include enterprise funds, special revenue funds, etc. So while the general fund budget is $148 million, the operating budget for all funds is about $225, so almost $250 million. The capital budget for all funds is $45 million. In total, the operating capital and budget for FY22 is $271 million, which is $5 million more than the FY21 original budget. In the Mayor's recommended budget, the millage rate for FY22 is recommended to be 13.7 mils, which is the same rate as FY21. The total general fund property taxes are estimated to be $73.5 million, which is $5.3 million more than originally estimated for FY21. We expect sales taxes to increase about 5% over FY21, an additional $1.25 million. Other taxes are projected to be about $1 million higher, and this reflects current trends in revenues for franchise fees, business taxes, alcohol, and rental car excise taxes. The budget includes an estimate of $12 million for charges for services, which is $1.8 million less than FY21. So all those previous revenues I mentioned were increases and charges for services, and also fines and forfeitures are estimated to decline $1.7 million, and that is due to the pandemic. So we've had impacts to our downtown parking, our leisure services charges, and of course our fines are down as our courts have not been operating, and we've not had as many fines levied. So those are some deductions from the increases in revenues that we were expecting. As far as expenditures are concerned, we've had the department's requested about $9.3 million, or $9 million in the general fund for new initiatives, new programming, additional positions, SPLOST and T-SPLOST operating budget impacts. The Mayor's recommended budget includes roughly $2.4 million for these additional expenses. The FY22 budget, as recommended by the Mayor, also includes 12 new full-time authorized positions across all funds. So that would bring the authorized level of positions to 1,741 for Athens-Clarke County government. The budget, as recommended by the Mayor, includes $1.9 million for the FY22 portion of a revised pay plan for public safety employees. That implementation is set to begin next month with the FY21 allocation you made last year. Across all funds, the budget includes approximately $1.1 million for the performance management program for non-public safety employees, which is equivalent to 2% of pay and related benefits. And this will be added to the departmental budgets based on the proportional share of salaries. And so those pay increases will be tied to the personnel evaluations that happened in March, that happen every year that help to govern those allocations. Some of the other expenses would include additional funds for capital, to get the capital request up to about $5.5 million, an increase over last year. Some of the capital, about $3 million of capital, was deferred through the use of CARES Act funding, and so this restores that funding. The fleet replacement fund, very similarly, an additional $1.4 million this year, and our health insurance is going to require an extra $1 million as well. So in order to balance this budget, the mayor has recommended the use of about $5.2 million of fund balance. Let me restate that. The mayor, after deducting the 2-month operating reserve of 16.7%, that leaves about $4.5 million of fund balance left over. And the mayor proposes to use all of that and augment that with American Rescue Act funds in the amount of about $700,000 to get that use of Act funds going to fund balance, added to the existing 4.5, creates about 5.2, and then that would then be used to help fund the expenses in addition to the new revenues that I mentioned earlier. Also, I will say, and this was in the mayor's letter, the cover letter to the budget, but some attention was paid to the 6 strategic commitments and the priorities that you have articulated at the various retreats that we've had throughout the year. And with respect to informed, engaged residents, a new community engagement coordinator in the Public Information Office, a civic dinners program through the Inclusion Office, and the continuance of our ClearPoint performance management and open data initiative that we're very excited to bring more information to our residents. There's also a number of initiatives that continue to emphasize a commitment to healthy, livable, and sustainable Athens-Clarke County. The mayor's recommended budget includes funding for a full-time energy program and conservation coordinator in the sustainability office, as well as new purchase of 2 leaf vacuums and shifting county operations towards battery-operated leaf blowers. I will say that much like last year, the use of CARES Act funding to help defer expenses that traditionally fall to the general fund, this was done with Athens Transit last year. Traditionally, that $2.4 million general fund transfer was deferred using CARES Act funding, and that same plan is in place for this year to avoid that additional $2.4 million of impact to the general fund budget. And so we're looking towards those federal funds to help offset that. Youth activities and family supports are also a key element of this strategic commitment. The 3-year pilot of the Young Urban Builders is extended. Counselors in training, which will provide summer employment for up to 23 teens through Leisure Services initiative is in here. Continued renovations to both Lay Park and East Athens Park centers, and Juneteenth educational events are also included in the FY22 mayor's recommended budget. Public safety initiatives under Safe and Prepared Community includes the Department of Corrections extending their transition center for 10 more beds, the creation, or I should say the reinstitution of the Police Youth Cadet Corps. The Jerry Neesmith co-responder unit will be bolstered with 4 additional licensed clinical social workers who will be paired with redeployed ACCPD officers. In addition to SPLOST program and partnerships in shared prosperity, a new position in housing and community development funded with the CARES CDBG funds to assist as a homeless specialist with a coordinated entry system and to work with our homeless coalition is included. And as the Inclusionary Zoning Working Group completes their work, the mayor has set aside some funds of $120,000 as a placeholder as they work through their deliberations and policy recommendations to you for use in FY22 to move that initiative forward. Under accountable and responsive government, I've indicated the pay increases that will help with recruitment and retention. You had also asked for a feasibility study for an employee health clinic or similar partnership opportunity. That is in here. We will expand diversity, equity, and inclusion training that began with subsets of ACC Gov employees in this year to the entire workforce in FY22. There's a funding of an HR generalist focused on minority recruitment work. And there's additional workforce development, which will continue through the Athens Community Corps, is funded in the mayor's recommended budget. So that is a high-level budget overview. Of course, there's a lot of detail in the budget, but ready to answer any questions you have on the budget overview, or we can move on to the questions, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. Let's have, if anybody has any clarifying questions regarding Manager Williams, just raise your hand and we can go through this. Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Myers.
This is a general question on revenue. That, I'm just curious. So much of our revenue is because of the increase in the assessments and the land value of homes in Athens-Clarke County. I'm looking at a house here that's gone up $250,000, $220,000 in 3 years. How do we mitigate for that? How do we know that, we're assuming, we have this extra money because this increase in land value. How do we know that that's going to hold? And what do we do to compensate for that, or thinking ahead? And then also, of course, while we're at that, there's the house I'm looking at is someone who's owned the house for years and years, and clearly their tax bill has increased tremendously.
That is an excellent question, Commissioner Myers, and one that let me attempt to answer that, and we can go further in bringing more detail for you and others that are more interested in that. So you are absolutely correct. The growth in the digest is something that is beyond the control of anybody here, although you could argue that land use decisions, decisions to support the economy and things of that nature can help to drive those things. I think we all agree we've seen an increase in town property values, which one might argue goes back to 20 years ago when land use decisions were put into place that, established the green belt and really sought to drive redevelopment in the urban core. And we've been seeing that, coupled with a lot of the investment this government has made in making the community more livable, whether it's, pedestrian access. And then on the private sector side, there's just a whole bunch of things that have the Classic Center has driven different growth for downtown. The university has expanded over time. So all those things combine to make Athens a more desirable place for some to live, and that folks move here and pay more for properties than perhaps, the folks that were living here before. So all that being said, Commissioner Myers, there's no guarantee that this increase in digest growth will continue. In the past few years, we've seen growth rates of 7%, almost 10%. Back 5-10 years ago, and not including the downturn, you really would get more growth rates of 3 to 5% is more reasonable. So we've been seeing some accelerated growth in the past few years, and that is a very good question to ask. As we seek to create new obligations for funding, whether it's through new programs or projects that require maintenance, just being able to sustain that funding in the future is going to be an important question for this body and future bodies to struggle with.
Go ahead, Commissioner Hamby.
I'm good, Commissioner Edwards. I found the answer in the email Blaine sent. Thank you.
Great. Any other clarifying questions for Manager Williams about the overview? Okay, great. Oh, Commissioner Lane had one.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'd like some more info. Let's see. I'm still going through this document. Is there more info on the Cadet youth cadet program in this document.
Yeah, I saw Manager Williams' email that he sent to us at 5:40. There's some details about the cadet program.
Okay, I'll look into that because I do have concerns about that, and I'm wondering, just what the past success of it is, and if it would be as successful in the current climate, and if it, we might be better off creating a new program that simply engages youth in, public safety and community in general, and introducing them to police work is just one aspect of that. I've been advocating for a kind of youth park ranger or trail ranger type program that might offer that segue.
Well, and there is, and just so the viewing public understands, so there were a number of questions posed by commissioners after the initial budget work session late Tuesday night, and staff has tried to answer those questions, and we sent a document late this afternoon. Not all the questions were answered. They're still pending. The history of the cadet program is one of those that's pending. I will say, I think just at a high level, Commissioner Link, a couple of things at work here. One is engaging youth, of course. One is from a workforce development standpoint, showcasing what careers in police might look like. And number three, I think we would all agree that we would seek that our entire unified government workforce reflect the community, in particularly the police department. So it's a way of connecting with people, and I think that's a general theme, really, from the community core through our other departments. That we as a government, we need people to help deliver the services to our residents, and we have residents who are in need of jobs. Y'all are investing in our, the mayor and commissioner are investing in our employees by, increasing pay and benefits. And so if we can reach out and provide jobs to people that live here and need jobs, and the police department would be, you're right, Commissioner Link, it's just one facet of this very complex government. But I think that that's the spirit in which the program was meant to be.
I'm just concerned that, in the general climate in this day and age, I wonder how many youth would actually be attracted to a program that has policing in its title, where there could be a broader means of introducing young people to that line of work. That they might be more open to even engaging in the first place.
So this sort of transitions us towards, let's go ahead and move around among the colleagues and highlight some of our key priorities for this budget season. So just go ahead and continue on, Commissioner Link.
I mean, that's just one question I had about one particular line item in the budget. I've stated some of my priorities last night that hadn't been highlighted by other commissioners. I'm definitely very adamant about this historic preservation plan, for a long list of reasons, including, low-income home improvement, and, just these reactive battles that we end up in when historic structures are threatened, and just having an overall plan, which we are long overdue for. So that is one thing that I did bring up the other night. And homelessness needs are a high priority for me. But I do believe a lot of those needs could be funded through ARP money.
Commissioner Link.
Sorry, Manager Williams. So
no, go ahead.
Priority one, the historic preservation plan. What's another one you got for us in this budget? Another top priority of yours.
Let me go to my notes from the other night. The DA's requests, we elected a new DA that has a very new way of looking at criminal justice, and it's one that I believe a lot of us are in line with. So, I think we do have some obligation to help fund those priorities. I would like to really, go through this line item and understand things that could be funded by ARP to help fit some of these other priorities into the budget.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner Link. Go ahead, Manager Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Sorry to talk over you earlier. Commissioner Link, we had just been talking, and you've been talking for some time about a quiet zone.
Yes, that too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3 for Commissioner Link, Historic Preservation Plan, DA request, and quiet zone.
Yeah. And,
okay.
I'd like to hear Commissioner Thornton's input on that and the mayor's input on that, because I know that we've all had discussions with constituents about it.
Okay. I was thinking we could just kind of go around. I
just had a quick question, and maybe like something procedurally that would be helpful.
Yeah.
I am trying to take notes of what everyone else's priorities are, and if people have budget figures for the amounts of their requests, I would love to have that information as well. So, for example, I do have notes on the DA's, the district attorney's request, as well as estimated figure for the cost of the historic preservation plan. Do you have an idea of how much the quiet zone?
We just got I just got numbers from the manager this afternoon, and it could be up to, I believe, $206,000. Is that because we'd be required to cover the $6,000 application fee that CSX would require. And then we'd be required to cover the actual study that they require, which is anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000. Is that correct, Manager?
And that's an estimate. We're not sure. It's really I'm basing that estimate, Commissioner Link, on the number of crossings that would be involved. And just it's a rule of thumb, but we wouldn't know until we got to the end. But certainly the $6,000 starts the process. And then we just have to see when we got to the preliminary engineering.
Okay, so Commissioner Link, you're thinking fully fund the historical preservation plan, fully fund the DA's request, and then do $206K for the quiet zone?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
And that'd be a not to exceed figure.
Okay.
Hey,
since
we started with District 4, can we go to District 3? Can we go to District 4 next?
Yeah, you're next. Go for it.
Okay, thanks. I would rather the historic preservation money be done internally. I mean, I agree with some of the objectives that Commissioner Link outlined, but I would wonder why our internal department can't be covering this. One of my things and thanks for the feedback. I haven't been able to read all of it, but the thing I prioritized in email was the corridor staffing, and that's in hotel motel funds. So I totally would like to support the $1,054 that Central Services asked for 2 groundskeepers. That comes out of hotel motel, not general fund. So I would like
105,000.
154,000 for 2 full-time.
154,000, 2 full-time groundskeepers for the corridors.
And that's out of hotel motel. Okay. So the other that would be general funds, the public defender asked for $28,000. I would like to know more about that to support that. And then I really believe that it was a worthy investment for us to do the public information office. They would want a digital coordinator for $78,000. We've all seen how much our public interface can be improved, and it improves our community knowing what we're doing. And then the full-time request from the Board of Elections, we have a resolution about supporting the Board of Elections, and they asked for increase in poll workers, 13,200, and a full-time election assistant of 60,000. So those were listed. Thanks for asking, and then thanks for getting the things that staff has already studied, staff has already asked for, but didn't get included. So that's where I picked those out of.
Okay, so to be clear, number 1, corridor groundskeepers, $154K. Pete, public defender's full request around 28K, public information officer, digital coordinator, 78K, board of elections request 13K for the poll workers, around 60K for the assistant.
Yeah. So that's like 3 different departments, but some of it's hotel motel and some general fund. So I'm not sure and how we find money to do this is the bigger question, but hopefully we can get to our priorities and then find the money.
Yeah, I think once we do this, and we'll go around and talk about things, maybe we can all come together about reducing to get more funds to fund what we're talking about.
Okay.
District 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, so I guess I have 3 things really here. The first one also on the public defender's office request. I would like to see us that funded. It's also a pretty small gap of $28,000, but to try to bring that up, that disparity and pay for the defenders compared to the prosecutors, just get a little bit closer. The funding the Athens behavioral health alternative crisis response pilot for year 1. That is a budget impact of $369,000. And my last one here will be on having the Athens area homeless shelter funded as an independent agency with under the community service agency funding that we have there. And I have not been able to look through the notes yet to see if their request was included in these notes and the questions. I had asked for that, so I haven't seen that yet, but so I don't have an exact amount yet for that. Okay,
if you're able to dig that up, just chime in, and we'll add that to your list here. So, we're getting some agreement around the public defender's request of 28K, and then the Athens alternative crisis response, Athens behavioral health alternative crisis response for 369K. All right, and then we'll wait to hear about the homeless shelter. Number 6, District 6, Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. My number 1 is the living wage floor, which the figures we got from staff would be $700 to $800K, although that would probably be less if we approach the 2% raise with the model I described on Tuesday of tying it to the median salary rather than being a flat 2%. I would also like to see the advantage behavioral proposal. I had that as 368.6K was their total request. I also would very much like to see the public defender's request at 28.8K, and the Athens area homeless shelter's independent agency request was 220K. And I'd also like to see that. So I guess that's 4, but those are my top. Thanks.
Cool. What could you clarify for me the first item you said about raising to 15? You said something about the 2%, the median. Could you flesh that out real quick for us, please?
Yeah. So basically, if we there's the proposal to give everyone a 2% raise, just flat across the board, and I'm proposing that we do 2% of the median salary for everyone, which would cost the same essentially, but it would be a bigger raise for the people who are currently paid less, which I think would partially help with the wage compression challenges that we're dealing with by bringing everybody up to 15. And that would also put even more towards those very lowest paid workers from that 2% figure already in our budget, which would lessen the total cost. I'm not exactly sure by how much because I just got those figures from staff right before our meeting, but hopefully I can flesh that out before we meet on Tuesday.
Okay, great. So you've got raising everybody up to 15, 700 to 800K, and tinkering with that 2% raise, base it on median, then the 368K alternative crisis response, another voice for the public defender request, and then the Athens area homeless shelter request at about 220K. Okay, great. I'll skip myself. All right, Carol, you want me to go? All right, I'll go. I also I feel good about the public defender's request as well. I would. I'm working on some figures for a couple of street light improvements, as I alluded to in the Deering Street neighborhood, where we've had those problems with sexual assault for the past year and a half. So I think that figure might. I don't think it'll come. Well, I'll throw it to Manager Williams. Manager Williams, just ballpark estimate. What are we looking at if we put 5 street lights up in that area on existing poles? Just a rough estimate, back of the envelope.
I'll have to get that to you, but we would be leasing it through Georgia Power, so really it's just more. It's a nominal cost, but just the funding of paying the extra Georgia Power bill for that.
Yeah.
But I can get you an exact one for that.
Yeah, I'll roll that out. So those are really my top 2. Some of that safety and Deering, and then the PD request sounds good to me. And as we go through this process, I don't think that these are locked in stone. So as we learn more about each proposal and how viable they can be, I trust that folks will move and get behind certain things. Commissioner Myers.
Okay, number 1 is funding for a more competitive salary for the Energy Program and Conservation Coordinator. This person's going to be involved in we got $16 million of work in the next 10 years that will save us oodles of money, and so be getting grants for us and working with those grants and reaching out and inspiring the community and business and industry, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to get the best person possible in that position. Second, the district attorney's office, we need to respond to her request. She's doing incredible and plans to do incredible criminal justice reform that'll have large ripple effects through our community and impacts on individuals and families. And since I have to have a third one in here, I don't have to have one, but let's put the public defenders in there as well.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Myers. So,
Russell, one more. The energy thing is a half-year position, so it would, and I can get some numbers on that down the road. I haven't done that, but that is a half. That's not starting till the middle of the year.
All right, so you'll get us some figures on the energy coordinator salary bump that you desire.
Yeah.
Okay.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Sure, go for it.
The 2 folks who spoke to the DA's request, are you talking about fully funding the full amount, or is there a portion of it that stands out to you?
I think Commissioner Link was fully, but what about you, Commissioner Myers?
Well, fully would be great, but I haven't gotten the information back on anything to do with the budget yet, so I have to sort of think more on that.
Okay.
Ideally, I'd like to fully fund it.
I agree. Ideally, it's fully, but I believe there's room for discussion.
Okay.
If I might, Mayor Pro Tem, just for further clarification too, at the next budget hearing, I believe that we've got some slots for constitutional officers to come speak, and I think the DA is one of those.
Great. Okay. What about is it appropriate to get the public defender, the chief public defender? We've had a lot of interest on that, Manager Williams, too.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Great. Commissioner Thornton.
What
are some of your top priorities?
Are we limited to 3? I think that's what Commissioner Myers led me to.
We've had a few have gone to 4. Okay. Yeah.
Well, one of my top ones, and I would also say fully funded until we, get more detail, is the DA's office. for the work that it's going to take for the criminal justice reforms that we're looking for. Commissioner Link mentioned about the quiet zone. That would definitely be something that would probably be my number 2. I spoke to, and I kept looking through my notebook, but I have spoken to Mayor Gertz about cameras in those isolated areas. I didn't see it, but I think it was like a $30,000 investment somewhere that way. So cameras in my isolated areas, or anybody's I don't know how many cameras you get, but definitely cameras.
For the illegal dumping?
Yeah, in that,
Okay.
I'm sure there are other places besides Smoky Road and Nowhere Road. I'm sure there are other places, but those were and Pitt Road, but I'm sure there may be other illegal dumping in isolated areas. So the cameras, I think Commissioner Wright already mentioned about the corridor, which I support. But this is I have 2 questions, and I've been in several meetings, and I know we have not talked about this before, so I don't know if this is the place, but I need to know how much we are charging our Little League football teams to use our fields. It seems that has been a barrier, and an African-American community is speaking out about it, in small groups, but I don't know what that entails. So that might not be something we could discuss now, but I would like to see if that is an expense that we can waive or change.
Can you get those figures for us, please, Manager Williams? We can see the budget impact and whether or not we can maybe forgive those for this budget upcoming fiscal year.
And my last thing, of course, I don't know where we are with homelessness. We haven't a dollar amount with it. So, and the new thing that I've been meeting.
The Athens area homeless shelter made a request for $220,000.
Okay, I would definitely support that.
Okay. And
the new thing that we have not talked about is the upsurgence of the gang activity in the community. I don't know what that goes under. I don't know what programs nearly helps with that situation, but there is a growing gang violence that I think we as the local government needs to address. So I know it's nowhere in the budget per se, but we definitely need to put that on our radar. Okay. And my last thing then is, and I spoke to Kelly about, and I don't know if this is a big budget item, but I do think joining the National League of Cities, which is about $9,000, would be so beneficial for this body and our local government and our residents. So those are mine.
Great. So fully fund the DA, quiet zone, trash dumping surveillance, corridor grounds crew, possibly waiving Little League football field rental fees, Athens area homeless shelter, gang violence, joining the National League of Cities.
That's me.
Great. Commissioner Hamby.
Is there anything left?
You tell us.
I don't know. Yeah.
Feel free to piggyback.
I am. I certainly do agree with a lot of what's been asked for here. Certainly the corridor dollars. I think that's important. The corridor committee voted unanimously for that. So I think Andrew Saunders does a good job and will help us keep Athens looking good with that. Athens Memory Justice and Memory Committee. I know Commissioner Parker is part of that as well, and Mayor Gertz has asked for $50,000 to help with a walk of remembrance that they'd like to do. Is a one-time capital expense from that standpoint. So hopefully that'll be easy to accommodate. There's another one for some hotel motel tax dollars to add an additional $35,000 on to the existing $65,000 for downtown community events. You'll remember we do those community event programs for that are focused on downtown. Since we didn't have any events last year, adding an additional $35,000 will help us with our existing event and possibly fund some new events for downtown and really start gathering back as a community as we overcome the remnants of this COVID stuff. I certainly, I'm going to piggyback on the homeless shelter expenditure for an independent agency, but I'm also going to add on there, if we can, Athens Land Trust as an independent agency for looking at inclusionary, helping manage whatever comes out of the inclusionary zoning committee that's there. So I think I hit them all right there, Commissioner Edwards, Mayor Pro Tem Edwards, and
Great.
One thing I will help with, if it helps with finding dollars for it, I do have some questions like Commissioner Link about the Police Cadet Academy. Not that I would disagree with it. I'm just wondering if the timing is not the timing, but I just need to learn more information about it and why it is we got rid of it in the first place. From that standpoint, I do have some questions about the civic dinners and whether or not that's a priority expense for this year. So not that I disagree with it. I guess we're just trying to figure out what our priorities are. So we need to go from there. So thank you, sir.
Great. So Commissioner Hanby, corridor grounds crew, Athens
Right.
Justice and Memory,
$50,000 for those taking notes.
$50K, $35K from hotel motel in addition for downtown events, ADDA downtown events.
And remember, we approve those events as it comes back to us. So just want to make sure you are aware of that.
Right. That'll come for our approval.
Right.
Then the Athens area homeless shelter allocation of $220K. And then the Athens Land Trust, any idea on that figure, what that might come out to be?
I know the mayor's already got $124,000 in his budget for that. So I guess what I'm suggesting is just allocate that as to an independent agency for the land trust. No new money there. It's already in the budget. So.
Okay. 124. Great. All right. And, Commissioner Davenport.
So 154,000 for central services, complements the corridor ground crew. My number one though would be Athens area homeless shelter funding of 200,000 plus. Number two would be living wage, 2% median. Figure out what that cost would be. And PIO, they do great work. And this is not a number 5, but just a question for Blaine and our staff about our Bloomberg initiative, workforce development. I don't think it costs any money, but I'm interested in getting that revitalized since COVID is hopefully fading away.
Okay. So number 1, the Athens area homeless shelter allocation, and then the corridor groundskeepers, number 2.
So number 2 would be living wage.
Okay, living wage, and then also what Commissioner Hull was saying about tying the 2% raise to the 2%. Median.
That's correct.
Okay. And then the corridor grounds crew.
That's correct.
Great. And then
the PIO.
And then the PIO. What was that?
78,000.
Okay. And that's for a new full-time
That's
It's on a
correct.
digital coordinator in the
digital
packet.
coordinator. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Digital coordinator. Great. And we're waiting for more information about Manager Williams about tying that 2% raise to median, correct? Commissioner Houle, are we waiting for more figures on that?
I got the median income figure, and so now it's just a matter of, I guess, trying to plug. If staff could do this, I mean, finance is going to do a better job than me, obviously.
Right.
If we do both, I'd be curious how much that reduces the figure for the cost of the living wage floor. Can we get that from staff, Manager Williams?
Yeah.
Well, I just want to make sure I understand. So, Commissioner Houle, you're saying tie the 2% to the median, and so the 2% is a performance. It was intended to be a performance increase across the entire government. So, are you saying isolate it to a certain salary range, or I may not
I'm
understand?
saying instead of everybody getting 2% of their salary, everybody gets 2% of the median salary.
Okay, so we calculate
So it ends
what
up being the
2% of the
same.
median. Yeah.
Yeah.
You calculate what 2% of the median salary is in the government, and you give that amount across the board.
So everybody gets a bit more, and it's a much more significant increase for the folks who are the lowest paid, which should both reduce the cost of that living wage floor figure overall and also help address the wage compression issue.
Is that clear,
Kind of-
Manager Williams?
COLA raise.
Well, this is not a cost of living increase, though.
But it's the way that cost of living increases tend to be styled, where everybody gets the same amount, but that amount is based on the median salary.
Well, I don't know about that, but Manager Williams, do you know what Commissioner Houle's, are you clear what his proposal is?
It sounds like it could just be a bonus. Everybody gets the same amount of bonus.
That's right. Yeah, everybody gets a flat amount. And
Right.
that flat raise amount is 2% of whatever the median salary is among all county government employees.
Mhm.
So if we could hear back from finance and from you, Manager Williams, about that proposal.
The median salary is 46.4, which equates to 22.35 hourly. It'll be 2% of that. I can get my calculator out and look at, but
$46,400 is the median salary. Is that what you're saying?
correct.
Okay, so 2% of that,
That was
$920.
$496. Yeah.
That'd be a $929, increase, flat
Yeah.
increase.
That's right.
And we've done raises like that before, or bonuses like that before.
Great. So we'll wait to hear back from Finance and Manager Williams, maybe at the next budget hearing about that proposal.
Just to clarify, all that leaves us wondering about is how much that reduces the estimate of the cost for the living wage floor increase.
Okay, so after that raise goes in, what's our new calculation to bring everybody up to 15 an hour?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Commissioner Thornton, you have a clarifying question?
Yes, I definitely am supporting the Athens homeless shelter. And I'm wondering, though, I think County Manager Williams in a discussion said that his staff was looking at the homeless encampments in other areas. I'm wondering, could there be some type of report on what you found so far, County Manager Williams, because that is going to be a hot issue moving forward. So I don't know how much you've already done. I don't know. I have no idea about those two things, about the gangs and homelessness. I have no data or no information, but if there's something, a one pager on both of those, I would be interested.
Great. So Manager Williams, maybe you could provide that snapshot in time survey most recently, and also any sort of reports created by police or solid waste when they clean up an encampment, some information like that possibly. Okay.
Yes, I can give you some very quick feedback, Mayor Pro Tem, just to kind of prime the pump, if you will. So we did spend a couple hours across departments today talking about, as I intimated in a email yesterday.
Let me interrupt you. Let me interrupt you real quick. We're going to go right to Commissioner Parker after this. Go ahead. Go ahead, Manager Williams.
Well, I'll be more brief. I will send you a follow-up that talks about this. So, looking holistically of how and what the role of our government is with homelessness, we do participate at several junctures by supporting partners, and I'll send all that to you. You gave an example of trash. It would greatly help whether you end up with a regulated camp or an unregulated camp to have a separate line item budget for disposal of waste that is collected in these cleanups, because we have to dispose of the landfill. The landfill's an enterprise fund. Whatever department takes it out there has to pay for it to go past the tipping scale. So I would say $25,000 for a separate line item there would be very helpful for solid waste and central services. Now, Commissioner Thornton, that doesn't answer your question. You're asking on a much bigger level. And so something's forthcoming there, but there's an immediate small ask, I think, that could help with that in a very small way next year.
Great. Go ahead, Commissioner Parker.
Thank you.
What are some of your top priorities?
Yes. I was looking up because I'm really glad that Commissioner Hamby brought up the requests made by the Memory and Justice team. We actually, in some of the materials sent yesterday regarding our meeting next week, some of those requests were outlined, including the Athens-Clarke County Black History Center. They don't have a figure for that yet, but they do have outlined in it a few staffing requests, et cetera. And I'd be happy to send this along to everyone so that they have it. Commissioner Hamby mentioned the Londontown Walk of Recognition, which they currently have estimated would cost about $27,000. Let me pull up this next one.
Okay, I thought that was 50.
Yeah, it's 50, Commissioner Parker.
Okay, the latest thing that we just got yesterday says 27.
Okay. Yeah, I met with Ms. Whitehead on Thursday of last week, and we changed that.
Great. So. Good. That's good to know. There is a proposal for dovetailing with our conversation around living wages. Another request they have made is to bring all the workers of Athens-Clarke County up to $28 an hour. I have been supportive of bringing the wage floor up to 15 at least, and agree that considering applying a 2% of the ACC median income salary increase for all employees might be a way to help with the wage compression questions. So as others have said, it's been estimated at about $700,000, but maybe less if we consider that option for addressing wage compression. I would really like to see, probably my top priority, honestly, is the Athens Behavioral Health proposal for alternative crisis response teams, figured at $368,000. Yeah, that's it. I also would like to complete the public defender's request for $28,000. In response to some of Commissioner Thornton's questions about gun violence in the community, which has been on my mind, I've been talking to a lot of members of the community about. I think that investing in more robust youth development opportunities and other forms of social infrastructure in at-risk neighborhoods is a good way of helping mitigate those concerns and take a preventative public safety approach to those crises, before they arise. And so I have, as I mentioned last meeting, one area, in addition to exploring some of the other leisure services requests that Commissioner Thornton put forward, I intend to put forward a plan or a proposal for a municipal community garden pilot that would provide a youth development opportunity as well as active recreation and beautification of underinvested in neighborhoods, which I estimate at about $100,000 for one-time capital costs and $50,000 for operating. And we haven't really gotten to this yet, but I wanted to propose, and this will ultimately be dependent upon feedback we receive from some of the questions myself and Commissioner Hull put forward at the last meeting, but consider liquidating any military grade capital assets that may be redundant or superfluous within the police department to be reallocated towards preventative public safety programming particularly for at-risk youth, akin to the municipal community garden program, investments in leisure services like Commissioner Thornton brought up, and other means of mitigating issues of gun violence in the community. But yeah, that's it.
Great. Okay, so number one, the Londontown Walk of Recognition, $50K. And I think I understood you correctly, the 2% median salary raise, and then seeing how that affects the $15 an hour wage floor. Okay. And then $368K for the advanced behavioral alternative response crisis teams, the full public defender request, the municipal community garden project, $100K in capital, $50K in operating, and then number 6, liquidating.
Oh, there's another thing I didn't bring up. I wanted to echo your questions, Mayor Pro Tem, about street lighting, as that's a request I often get from constituents as well. So just to reemphasize interest in getting those figures on how much per installation and operation of a streetlight that would cost, and then kind of move from there.
Cool. And then finally, liquidating military assets.
Yeah.
Military grade hardware in the police. Gotcha. Okay, great. Manager Williams, you intimated you had a follow-up question for Commissioner Hull about the salary, I think.
Well, just a point, and this is something that when you dive into all the pay, so a couple of facts, and this is in the information that you were sent. So we've got 66 full-time positions with a minimum pay below $15 an hour. Of those 66, we've got 15 vacancies. So there's 51 employees currently with the minimum pay positions, not employees, but positions. That's the distinction I wanted to make for Commissioner Hull. So because the positions start there, and then you work your way up through performance increases and things of that nature. Of the 51 positions that have a minimum rate below 15, 27 of those employees actually make more than 15 an hour. So that leaves 24 employees who earn less right now than $15 an hour. So I think, Commissioner Hull, you were asking, well, if we could just factor in this $994 raise, if that would get them over 54. I don't suspect it will. But what I guess the point is, even if it did, the positions itself, that has a minimum pay rate. So if somebody let's say y'all do this and then we lose a couple of people and they come in, then you've got people that are under 15 again. So you're not really
Yeah.
So in the $700,000 to $800,000 figure that Commissioner Hull referenced does talk about bringing all the positions up. So as we talk about this, just please keep in mind there's the employee that's in a various stages of a pay range, and then there's the actual pay range itself for the position, if that helps.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if we give an employee a raise, if they leave, that position would be vacated and somebody could start out again below 15 without getting that raise. Yeah. Okay. Commissioner Hull.
So to clarify, that figure, though, would be bringing all the positions up to 15 an hour, correct? And that also included the part-time and seasonal positions, which I don't think are part of that 24 figure that you gave for 24 positions, right?
Well, and I just want to, this is all in the packet, but I want to be clear about this. So that is a very, yes, simply increasing the wage floor for all part-time and seasonal let me go back here.
Is the information in the packet that you sent out?
Yes.
How the packet reads is the concluding paragraph is, so taking the full-time and part-time seasonal costs together, HR would estimate a cost between $700,000 to $800,000 to bring everyone up to 15 an hour.
That's part-time and seasonal.
Uh-huh. Well,
I'm not sure that includes
taking
everybody.
the full-time and part-time and seasonal together.
Gotcha. No, I see it on the next page. But with that,
Manager Williams, does that figure include HR's attempts to mitigate salary compression by raising wages for people who already make over 15 an hour?
no, and that's what I wanted. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So you can take that action, but what you do is you do create wage compression. If you were to try and ripple that throughout the organization, we don't have a figure for that. It'd be very, very expensive.
Right.
And I will say, having gone through the whole MAG study, even people's impressions of pay inequity, regardless of what position it was pretty stark. So the compression was what drove a lot of the angst that you heard around the MAG study that we worked through, as well as our FLSA adjustments that we worked through. I mean, that all had to do with pay compression, which I'm not, we need to be careful about creating that situation.
Is it not enough to make a clear explanation that we're currently experiencing inflation and the cost of housing has gone way up? We can't attract quality candidates without paying a $15 floor. I'm sorry we weren't there 2 years ago when you started working here, but this is where we're at now. How do we mitigate that concern?
Well, every job, every position, I should say, and there's about 400 positions. There's 1,700 employees, but there's 400 positions. Every one of those positions is graded both from terms of internal equity, what folks make across the organization depending on their knowledge, skills, and abilities, as well as external equity with a nod towards the market, because we don't want people leaving for a quarter more an hour, somewhere else. And so that creates a classification system where jobs are rated, they have pay ranges, and that's what we currently have. If you take a section of those pay ranges and move them up, then you have altered the classification system, which creates that compression. I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, yeah, and I guess one thing I'm concerned about, though, we have, how many vacancies do we have in these 66 full-time that pay less than 15?
15 positions are vacant right now. These are full-time.
15 out of 60?
66. So there's 51 filled positions where the minimum positions, not employees, positions with a minimum pay rate of below 15.
So almost, what is that, 20% vacancies? That's pretty significant. I mean, it almost seems like a recruiting hindrance. And I think we have to look at maybe how much we're paying.
Well, I mean, across the organization, we're at 15% vacancies.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and I do want to be careful about that, because part of that could be what you're hearing a lot of other employers say, that they're in a battle for talent. Part of it is that we do have the 120-day hold. So for positions, I have, made some exceptions for positions that we had to fill, but that 15% could involve intentionally held positions to comply with the 120-day hold, if that makes sense.
Okay, that aren't advertised. Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
I don't know how many that involves.
Okay. Commissioner Houle?
Don't know how much we want to belabor this for this meeting, because I did hear that you want us to get done on time, but I guess
let's not belabor it at all. Yeah. What you got?
The MIT living wage calculator has rapidly gone up in the cost, because the cost of housing here has, and the bare minimum they calculate someone needs to live in this community is $1,440. We could probably expect that to go up again soon. And so if we think about overall costs, the costs for people to live in this community, are also providing all this money for housing assistance. In the budget, I think we need to bring everybody up to an amount where they don't need to rely on assistance from us and others elsewhere.
Yeah.
And then I think, the onus is on us to explain why this needs to happen and how we're going to make it up to people. I'm open to us, funding a study to figure out how we can meaningfully address the compression issue as soon as possible. But I think, we got to get everybody up to at least enough to just, barely scrape by. And to be clear, that's $1,440 for a single adult with no kids.
Right.
So as soon as someone has children, 15 is nowhere near enough.
So at this point, I feel like part of where we've been going, we've talked a lot about what we want to see added on to the mayor's budget. We've seen a lot of common ground, particularly regarding getting a full request for the public defender's office. That's very prevalent among responses. We've seen a lot of responses about the corridor grounds keepers. But I'm thinking, maybe now we can go around and sort of put our thoughts about things that are in the budget that perhaps we would like to tweak that could save us some revenues to spend on some of these things that we like, that we all have sort of coalesced around. Again, be as specific as you can, and we can hear back from the manager. Maybe we can even get some input from the mayor too, if he has some ideas about why he put something into the budget. I know Commissioner Hamby, you raised your hand, so go ahead and make your contribution, and then you can launch right into responding to that prompt.
Sure, thank you. I was gonna kind of comment on Commissioner Hull's. I wouldn't mind seeing a study on how to deal with the compression as well. And he brings up a good point about Commissioner Hull brings up a good point about the wages here in town. I mean, certainly, of course, we have an affordable housing problem, but we also have a wage problem. So if more people are making more money, they might be able to afford the affordable housing. So, for any rate, just wanted to say that. But as far as budget and things like that, I may have some more suggestions at our next meeting, but certainly I've raised some questions about, at this time, the Police Cadet Academy thing that's, it looked like it 2 supervisors and 8 part-time folks. That seems 2 supervisors or 1 supervisor for, I don't know. It just, the whole question is about $184,000 for that expenditure. I'm not real sure about the civic dinners. I see the point of it all, but I think that probably might work best after we get the coast clear from COVID. So maybe next budget cycle might be more appropriate in bringing that up. It's not that I disagree with it. It's just a matter of trying to shake the money tree for helping some of these other things. So that may be one of the ones that has to go.
And how much was that one?
That was only 24,000, but it adds up. So
yeah, sure.
And I'm sure there's more, but I got to do some homework to look through it all. So I apologize if I wasn't ready for that question just yet. But I know
and that's okay. I think we'll probably do the same thing at the next hearing. So we'll go around again and talk about these tweaks. So initially, first glance, cadets and the dinners.
And I think too, what would be helpful at the next meeting, Commissioner Edwards, is if and staff usually does do this, but take the list of items that we've talked about here and add them up so that we know a bottom line figure of what we're all asking for and what we need to look for as far as revenue goes.
Cool. That sounds good.
Mayor Pro Tem, if I might, just
Sure.
because Commissioner Hamby brought it up, on that study for compression, and this is the very last line of that answer in the document you received and nobody's had time to look at.
Yeah, it said you had the money for that. Yeah.
We do. So we have asked, to maintain a pay plan takes an annual, it's got a life cycle like anything else. Doesn't mean that in 5 years we shouldn't revisit it to see how we're doing, but there are some funds in a line item there that we could use to fund a study to see what it would take to get us to 15 and hopefully avoid compression. So that is, you don't have to add that in there. If you want to see it, you could direct that and we could make it happen. Thank you.
Great. Okay. I think we'll kind of work our way around from Commissioner Hamby to Davenport, but Commissioner Wright, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. It specifically on, I'm also interested in that study so that we can get current on how to address the changes that are happening that Commissioner Huell brought out about the MIT calculator versus going with the $15 an hour. But for me, one of the things that in that equation of when you raise the hourly rate, specifically on the seasonal and the summer camps, we need to see the full the full equation of what happens when our seasonal and part-time counselors are $15 an hour, and then our camps become unaffordable to our public that counts on that. It's the most affordable, high-quality camp for children, leisure services. So when we get to that formula, when it's the seasonal for camp and through the year camps as well as summer camps, we really need to also see the effect that that's going to have on our community members who need that child care.
Okay. Commissioner Davenport.
Yes, sir. Some talking about things that we would like to tweak. Unfortunately, I have not yet read Blaine Williams' email, but I'm quite sure Tuesday I have more. But right now, I would like to take off. I'd like to tweak the historic preservation plan, not to go deep into the weeds, but I think staff will do a better job, or having our auditor do that type of work. But I love to to learn more, and I'll be reaching out to historic preservation hopefully Friday.
And what's the amount there?
It's only 20. It's only 29,000.
29. Okay. All righty.
That's not currently in the budget, though, right?
Well, I'm sorry, what?
That's not currently in the budget, is it?
It's in the mayor's recommended.
I think that was in his letter of things that he wanted us to consider to add. But
it was sort of a late addition, along with two other things that were in that same cluster. And one option, just in terms of that, would be to draw down further revenue replacement from ARP.
Okay, so to be clear, that's not in your budget. That's just something you mentioned as wanting if we can make it work.
Okay.
Okay, got it. All right, cool. So we'll hear more from you, Commissioner Davenport, on Tuesday about any other tweaks you'd like. Commissioner Parker, any revenue backing?
I'm sorry. I've had to leave and come back to the meeting a couple times because my internet is doing a thing. So just for clarification, are we talking about things that we would like to cut out of the budget?
That's right. Things we'd like to tweak and cut.
Tweaks to existing,
Yeah, get money for things we want.
Yeah, I think I spoke to one potential solution earlier. Among things that I think, just to maybe debate some requests that have been made that are not in the budget. I was looking at the cost for the dumping cameras, which to my understanding are just in the figures we've received are just in certain areas like the mall, like mostly public places. I've heard a lot of complaints about like private properties, and so that doesn't get into issues in that area. But my understanding is that it costs $23,000 up front and $11,000 yearly. But since 2014, Keep Pennsylvania Beautiful, or Philly, or whatever, Keep Philadelphia Beautiful, where they implemented a similar solution. It's only collected $21,000 in fines from the program over 7 years. And so overall, recouping $3,000 in expenses per year for a net expenditure of $8,000 per year. I just wanted to make sure that is right, and kind of just bring I'm still debating whether or not $8,000 a year for that, if it's still failing to address some of the other issue areas, like some of those that Commissioner Thornton brought up, I don't think are included in the current figures we have for how much it would cost, or any private properties for that matter. So I just got a couple questions about that. But in terms of the recommended budget, I think I've said my piece on potential remedies for how to afford some of these other expenditures we recommended.
Okay, what were those? What were some of your revenue recommendations to help pay for some of the programs?
Oh, so on our meeting, yeah.
recollection.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. In our meeting from on Tuesday, I had questions about revisiting the efficacy of our take-home vehicle program within the police department. How many vehicles in our fleet are going home with people outside the county? As I think they're currently requesting $500,000 to $600,000 for new vehicles. Whether that's because we need more of them because of the way our current program works, as well as detailed clarification and line items in the police department's capital budget related to insurance and maintenance of equipment, particularly interested in anything of, military quality.
Okay, right. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay, so looking at modifying the police take-home car program to save money there, possibly.
Right, and also as an incentive, I've had many constituents express that as a matter of incentivizing local hires, bringing back that component where, perhaps we bring it back to where it's only for people who live in the county. Considering some questions like that.
Okay. Yeah, honing some of those down and getting those to Manager Williams, if you haven't already, would be great. Because that's a big pot, 500, 600,000. Great, Commissioner Link, any revenue raising?
Yeah, sorry, I've got a crazy setup here. From what I understand, this homeless specialist position was created through the local government without any consultation with our providers. I kind of wonder if that money isn't better spent with our providers, and because there hasn't been any consultation with them on much of anything. This body hasn't yet heard from them, and I'm not quite sure I really, am ready to trust this local government with taking over some of this homeless service administration when we haven't really been able to gather much action on it ourselves. So I question that position, and I really would like to hear from our providers about the real needs for such a position. How
much was that one?
I can't even remember. It's just listed. I'm just looking at this list, which doesn't have the list on B12 that doesn't have the actual salaries.
And this is a
new. Speak to that a little if you'd like, Mayor.
Yeah, sure.
For Tim.
Go for it.
So that's funded through CARES CDBG CV dollars, so rather than general fund dollars, and that really is to consolidate the public sector interface with the homeless world. So one of the ongoing tasks that we're charged with as a continuum of care community is managing the homeless management information system, and that's sort of fractured activity right now, and this consolidates that to ensure that we're getting and tracking good data. And then the other big public sector interface is managing the solid waste and central services and other departmental responsibilities around homelessness. So really it's kind of providing that link between our departments and homeless needs.
So this position, sorry, finish up.
No, that's everything.
So this position doesn't have a general fund impact then?
That's right.
Okay, great.
Can we get a full description of it? I'd like to see a full description of the position. I'll continue. I do question this. I also question the police cadet program. I'm not sure we're going to recruit the kind of youth I don't know that we're going to create the kind of youth that are or target the kind of youth that really need recruiting into these alternative programs. I really question it. I've seen, Kyle Rittenhouse, the kid who's charged with murder, came out of one of those programs. I would rather see us invest in programs that target at-risk youth and steer them, towards careers that might include public safety or some other kind of community service as well. And the community dinners, I also question that. I wonder if that kind of funding couldn't be better invested in things like, fully funding ball field rentals, or our memory and justice program. I think those are kind of programs that achieve the same or even greater ends. I always wonder if these kind of public events simply draw the same old people, whereas, we can do a better job of targeting the kind of folks that don't typically turn out for community events. So those are just a couple places.
Great. Okay.
The cameras,
yeah.
the dumping cameras. I
Okay.
question the amount of that. Like, I don't understand why $40,000 is the price tag for these things, when, from what I understand, you can set up a wildlife camera and you can buy those off the internet for $25 a piece. I've got personal cameras, at my home, and you can get a whole system for $150.
Okay.
I really question the high cost of that, and if there aren't some more economical options.
Okay. We'll look at the dumping cameras a little bit more in depth. Commissioner Wright? So your three, Commissioner Link, were the cadets, the community dinners, and the dump cameras. Okay. Great.
Yeah, I don't have any specifics. I guess, I clearly need more time to bring up ways to find money for the good things that we're talking about moving forward with. I do think for us to be able to prioritize and allocate funding, we also need to know sources. So it seems to me that when obviously not everything, but when we get to that next level of prioritizing, understanding what we're talking about that the ARP money can be used for. What is it that hotel motel, which was one of mine, which I love it that fits into for the quarter grounds. That's 2 full-time workers for our community. T-Splost. I'm just wanting to make sure we know the revenue sources for these ideas so that we're not combing out general fund. But in that respect, it's too late to do it this year, but I would hope that next year we could start talking about our budget in a zero-based budgeting, where we start talking about, do we still want to continue to pay $75,000 for Envision? Okay, we'll go ahead and start talking about that stuff at the beginning so that we're not culling. I don't know. I just think that we could be trimming our budgets a little bit with our feedback throughout the year, so that we come into the budget with the mayor and the manager knowing what we would hope doesn't get, I don't know, has another source, or there's another source in the community that can pick up, if that's an example, that another entity's budget would have time to pick up something that we cut. So it's a process thing, details are important to me, and I hope to
like identifying maybe some capital projects in this budget right here that could be funded instead by ARP.
Exactly. I mean, like the homeless, making them an independent agency, I think is a good idea. Maybe there's some funding we can use for that, but for the bulk of that project and improve that we want to do in the homeless realm, that the American Rescue Plan funding would be for that. Because remember, we're allocating now before we get to that allocation.
Right.
A question I have.
Well, 1 second. Manager Williams, is that something, do we have time? How can we address that? With Judd possibly looking at those new Treasury guidelines? Could you get back to us on that too? Just sort of, I know those guidelines just came out, but I certainly, that resonates to me too. I mean, anything in this budget dealing with capital that could instead be paid with ARP and save general fund dollars, to me is a bonus.
I hope that when you're talking about this with ARP, that you look at the order from the president And I have seen where we have had money, federal money, and we kind of nitpick it. One of the things that I would like to see, and you know what, the pot gets bigger and bigger. That's the other thing. I'm attending all of these meetings, and the pot is getting bigger and bigger. And we may need to consider hiring someone maybe for the 4 years of its existence. Some of the money is now going to 2025 that will be experts on this. No offense to the manager's office, but he's very, 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 there's a lot of work already going. And we may need somebody to hold our hands that this is all they focus on is this ARP money. And, after these meetings and these webinars, it is overwhelming. And I just cannot see the manager's office being able to manage that. And we should be held accountable. And I think a lot of people are talking about this, and very few people have been paying attention to how it's unraveling. So that was something I was going to suggest later on, because I keep hearing people throw it out, and it's not that simple. And we need somebody to give us guidance on this.
Okay. I agree one more thing, Commissioner Wright.
Okay, I agree with that. And I have a question too about if we give funding to Historic Athens, then they become one of our agencies that then they turn into having a $1 a year rent. Remember the whole allocation of who pays what kind of rent. So I would like clarification on that. We give that money, then that changes what has already been an extensive project equity arrangement for rent. And I would like clarification if that's going forward, that doesn't change what was already set with that. So snowball effect on the funding. And on another topic, I agree with the justice and memory capital expense. Again, when it's a one-time expense versus a reoccurring expense, I think those are things we need to make sure we're taking out and identifying capital things so that we can put in a new capital gain. I would like us to think of memorializing signage. Think of the talks that we were having about the renaming, honoring Willie Hull and Aaron Hurd. And then, like Commissioner Denson was saying, he learned more about Lay Park, how that was named. And I wonder if we can't, I'm talking about more money now, but I mean, making sure we're getting signs where we have named something after a person. If we can put a sign up for a moon tree, I think we should be putting signs up for people that things have been named after. So if there's a pot of money that I think that just a memory capital, that maybe we can broaden that for other times and reasons to name things. So I think next time for us to all have had time to process this and have things to take out of the budget. Sorry, I'm not more specific.
Great. So we've got about 30 more minutes. Let's keep going. Commissioner Denson.
Thank you. So on ways we could save money, I guess. I agree with Commissioner Link. I am the Police Cadet Corps. It's a lot of money. It's a $184,000 program. I am not certain also that it would have the desired effect. I also wonder, is that the best way for us to use $184,000 for youth development? I mean, we definitely need, there's a lot of youth development needs. I mean, we hear from people, organizations who are doing that work all over the place. None of them have ever told me a Police Cadet Corps, I will say. I mean, I get it, but I think there might be something better out there that our youth will gravitate themselves towards more. And the ones who need it, right? The ones who need that support and who are looking for something to get into. So I would definitely be in favor of us removing that part, I think. And then I did have two revenue clarifying questions, I guess, to my fellow commissioners on stuff or the staff. So on the corridor grounds crew, which I think makes a lot of sense, and I think it makes a lot of sense for it to be part of hotel motel tax. That completely makes sense to me. If we were to take that out of hotel motel tax to fund that, what would that do to other, like, do we have any undesignated hotel motel tax that we could fund that with, or would we have to cut other things that are getting hotel motel tax at that point? But I know we only get a small share of that money. I guess I'll throw that to staff.
Yeah, Manager Williams, maybe you can get back to us, or Commissioner Hamby, do you have something ready?
There's usually a fund balance associated with some of that hotel motel tax stuff.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't all get allocated. Yeah.
I couldn't find that in there, but yeah. Go ahead, Alison. Yeah, sir.
Well, last night we learned from the Classic Center's presentation that they're estimating over 300,000 coming in from the new Airbnb, so the new revenue in that category that starts July 1. If I read that correctly, there was a deficit obviously from last year's, but Mike's right, Mr. Find the Money. There's usually left over, and especially this year when we didn't have all the activities downtown, right? That are some of the allocations too. So that'll be in the big book for the budget, but I bet somebody in finance can put their finger on it faster for next week. Good question.
So I love clarification of that, but I think that we can easily argue that is a beautification that helps tourism for having our corridors look nice, people driving in. And then the last, and I might have misheard this or I just didn't pick it up whenever it was being discussed, on the quiet zone. I know we were talking about doing the actual work of that, possibly with T-Splost, but this $206,000 just for doing that preliminary work. Are we saying that would be general fund money or T-Splost?
So, good question, Commissioner Denson. So, the first step is to fill out the application, and it requires a $6,000 application fee. And then what they do is a diagnostic exercise that emerges on the far end with some order of magnitude cost estimates for the scope of the quiet zone. So at that point, you've got some information that you could use to inform a T-Splost project, depending on the timing of when they get back to us. At that point, to move forward, you would need to enter into an agreement with the railroad for them to perform the preliminary engineering, which is much more intensive. And that's where I'm just guessing, y'all, $100,000 to $200,000. That's based on a traffic engineering cost estimate for them with intersections of around $12,000 to $20,000 per intersection. There's 8 crossings that we're looking at here. So that's where we got our informed figure of somewhere between 100 and 200. It could be more with the railroad. So to answer your question directly, Commissioner Denson, it could be that you go through this initial part of the process, you get an order of magnitude cost, you factor in some engineering funds, and you could just bake that into a T-Splost ask, both the engineering and the installation. Or you could use general fund dollars to go ahead and accelerate that preliminary engineering. So you could go either way with that. And I would just say, to the group that if you wanted to pursue this, you might just go ahead and budget the $6,000, start the process. Things take longer than you think. This could end up in the next budget year. You could end up baking it into the T-Splost process so that, it looks like with all the requests you have and the revenue sources that coming up. And Commissioner Link, I don't want to speak over your desires here, but the 206 might be hard to get to, but the 6 certainly isn't. And you could start the process and we could just be flexible going from there.
Okay, thanks. Okay, that completely clarifies it then. And I think that 206,000 is a big number, especially when we're talking about other big numbers, but I would completely be in favor of us going ahead and doing that first step of the $6,000 in this budget, getting the application going and going forward there. All right, that's all I had. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I would like to learn more. I agree with Commissioner Thornton that digging into discussions around ARP money is going to be really important because I think there's probably a lot of revenue replacement we can do to make big, good things happen this year. I agree that looking at cost savings by doing away with some of our militarized equipment, both in terms of insurance and maintenance of that equipment, but then also the revenue we can get from selling it. The Bearcat is I think a $220,000 vehicle, for example.
240.
Yeah. How much?
240.
240,000. And I think the insurance on that is tens of thousands of dollars. So that's probably just a job right there. And I agree that the police cadet program, I mean, I'd be open to maybe hearing, a work session on why that idea seems viable. And maybe it's something we could look at for next year, but it doesn't sound like something that makes sense in this year's budget with the many questions lingering that I think are very good. A parklet program, which I know has been assigned to our committee, might be an opportunity for us to generate some revenue if we get that in place sooner. Because, I think we'll be actually charging for those moving forward once we get out of COVID. Stronger enforcement of dumping and noise ordinances, I think could also generate a little bit. Not clear exactly how much, but I think that could help. And I guess just while we're kind of debating a little bit here, one concern I have about the DA's request, if we decide to put money into that, is, there's increasing the cost of prosecution doesn't sound to me like the best way to approach a reform to our justice system that's imbalanced. And if they have a few vacancies for assistant district attorneys, I'd like to think that money could be moved to the other stuff they're looking to fund, since they are hopefully going to have less prosecuting to do, since the order that I heard go out from our district attorney made it sound like they're looking to prosecute fewer cases. I think that's something to look at. And then I guess I'm not super convinced that the railroad quiet zone is the best use of our money from an equity perspective this year. I had sticker shock when I learned how much it costs. I think T-Splosh might be a good place to put that and get some citizen advisory committee input. But with hundreds of thousands of dollars, I just feel like that's best waited on until we can address some of the equity issues that are more pressing.
Great, thanks. I would say I also have questions about the cadet program, 186,000. I too am interested in the cost of some of these dump cameras, and then I'll be interested to see what the cost and scope of some of this. The Bearcat and some of the military hardware of the police is, just out of curiosity too. Commissioner Myers.
You got my smile because I looked at a baby picture that just arrived. Okay, so I'm very interested in which of these initiatives could be paid for by the ARP, including the Advantage Behavioral Health Pilot, the homeless funding for the homeless shelter, some programs actually that would go towards gun violence in the community garden idea, and the homeless specialist position. So some of them seem to fit in really well. And I know today at that webinar I went to, they had this wonderful chart with all these different funding sources and what could be included in them. And so I would like to see sort of a chart that gives us an idea of what could be funded by the ARP this year. Concerning the police cadet program, I don't think I'm in favor of that. I have asked again and again to informally to different people in the criminal justice field what kind of connections there are with the Athens-Tech criminal justice program that produces one of the largest cohorts of graduates every year, the majority of whom are African-American and Hispanic and come from Clarke County in contrast to some of the other programs. And I've never gotten a really good response. There are a lot of students in that program. I don't know where they're going, but so I need to know that there's a good relationship in a program with that existing criminal justice program that could segue people into our criminal justice or law enforcement professions here before I want to put money into something with high schools. And I think that's all I have now. I really hadn't gone through in terms of cutting things out.
Great. And we'll do the same on Tuesday. So as folks dive more into the budget and get more information from the manager, there will be more opportunities to similarly answer this prompt and kind of hone down what we're going for. Okay, wrapping things up, and then we will hear from the mayor and the manager, and then we will adjourn. Go for it, Commissioner.
I was wondering, with the independent agencies, are some of the agencies, and I'm sorry, I'm still trying to figure all of this out. Are some of the independent agencies also getting money from general fund, from another pot of money? That's what I'm trying to ask. Are there agencies that are getting money from more than one pot of money?
Like from CDBG?
Not CDBG. Anybody getting anything that is in another pot besides?
I think the Classic Center and the CVB, they receive some of the hotel motel tax funds if they're, but as far as most of the other independent agencies, I think it's mostly general fund.
Okay.
And then funds from state entities as well, or grants. So yeah,
that's
like
right.
a library or a
and Advantage would be
defects.
One of those, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're right, Mayor. And so you've got the independent agency transfer, and then they may have a separate CDBG award that you've given them. So there may be any independent agency may have several sources of funding from the government.
Okay. The one that I and even though it's not that much, and I think it would be nice if we weren't in such dire needs, is the community conversations. I think that would be one that I would have a problem funding. I know I'm probably going to get tomatoes thrown at me, but I would like to revisit and relook at Envision Athens.
Okay.
As far as, and this is in Commissioner Parker's district, about 2 years ago, and I'm bringing this up because this costs keep coming up about dump cameras. I didn't even know that's what you call it, but we had an opportunity, and I've heard it before, on cameras in the Nellie B area that didn't cost us any money, that never got put up. So my concern is, let's find the cheapest way to do it. But my residents are getting fined for illegal dumping on their property. There's also a safety issue. So I hope that if there's a cheaper way to do it, I have no problem with that. And especially if we can connect it to the police department. But it's a need in the rural areas, more so than the urban areas. So again, I think I'll be a little bit more prepared on Tuesday. But those are the two things that I'm looking at, and I hope I explained about the cameras.
Great. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Thornton. Commissioner Denson, one last thing.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Bertram. There was just a couple of them. It's just reaction to other people's stuff going around. One of them being on the inclusionary zoning, in which I also support us going ahead and picking somebody, Athens Land Trust, whatever it is, for the, I believe it was $120,000, which is about how much the mayor's put in there. There is one, and I guess we might just have to increase the cost if we're going to do this. The committee is talking about doing one more expense this year, which would be an analysis of our building and zoning codes. There's some organizations that specifically come in and do that, and then show us where there are some easy, simple fixes where we could actually change our code, because our code is hampering the building of affordable housing. And so this is a recommended step to be taken. and early looks at how much that would cost are around $30,000. So I was thinking that could originally come out of the mayor's recommended, but if we're going to do both things, we might have to increase that up to 150 or so thousand. And then two other quick things. One of them on the wildlife cameras, because I also agreed the cameras seem expensive. But when I read the response, there's some stuff here from the attorney's office that talk about we have to have a specific quality picture. And so therefore I have to use specific quality cameras to be able to capture those pictures for us to be able to prosecute people who are doing illegal dumping. And that's why the cost is kind of as high as it is, because we have to have very high quality cameras that can do certain things. Mm-hmm. And then really quick, going back to inclusionary zoning and the work we're doing there, and about the wages, I understand how difficult it's going to be for us to get up to $15 floor, but just to put this into connected to the work that we're doing in inclusionary housing, talk about affordable housing, somebody who makes $15 an hour, if we raise it up to that, is making $31,200. That puts them at 65% of AMI in Athens-Clarke County. 80% is considered low income. 50% is actually looked at as being indigent. Mm-hmm. They're right in between there, even if they're making 15. We have people who are making below that full time. Mm-hmm. So I understand how difficult it's going to be, but by us not paying at $15 or higher, we're creating things that are maybe a lot harder to see, a lot of expenses that are a lot harder to see, but that are affecting this community and this local government. So, yeah.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We're getting we got 8 more minutes, and I want to hear from Manager Williams and the mayor. He can adjourn us. So I got Commissioner Davenport, Commissioner Houle, and then Manager Williams. Go ahead, Commissioner Davenport.
I just want to add the leaf vacuums for downtown. Just add it to the list. $75,000 for 2 of them sounds a little expensive, or seems a little expensive. But just more clarification.
Mm-hmm. Okay, be careful talking about that one. Commissioner Houle.
I just wanted to mention the disparity study. I was trying to glance through this document while we were in the meeting, and it sounds like that's not in the budget. So I've heard a number of people, and I know it was explored in Government Operations Committee, but that's another thing that I'd like us to have in mind.
Okay, great. Any final thoughts, Manager Williams?
Well, just so Tuesday is a budget hearing, a public hearing, as is required by the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. Mm-hmm. Right now, we don't have time beyond the agenda setting session reserved for budget discussions. Of course, at the mayor's leave, that's up to him. The next scheduled meeting of this nature is next Thursday.
Okay.
And then if you would like an additional meeting, if needed, the following Tuesday, we have reserved for that in case you need that. And this is a small thing, but it came up several times. So the ball field rental, I just want to be clear about that. All of our youth sports leagues, there is an agreement between Leisure Services and these, what we consider them to be partners, because these volunteer leagues, whether it's Little League, the football leagues, Athens United, they're running a recreational league that we don't have to replicate and we don't have to staff. And so it's a great partnership, and it's worked over the years. My understanding is that we don't charge any of our youth partners any rental fees at all. Now, the football promoters charge their spectators to come in and watch the games. I think they're the only league that does that. So that might be what the issues are. But we'll follow up.
Yeah, maybe you and Commissioner Thornton can have a phone call and kind of get on the same page on that one.
Sure.
Great.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Mr. Mayor, any final thoughts before we're adjourned this evening?
Yeah, I really enjoyed hearing everybody's conversations. As I said to public, and I think everybody on the commission, the budget's wet clay, and we all work on it together. And so I'm certainly glad to have been able to get started with the lump of clay, and glad to see you continue to work it and need it, and looking forward to it going into the kiln. I did want to note, and I think in one of the myriad emails, over the last week. I mentioned this, but I'll follow up in my kind of weekly summary email. The intent is to have the first ARP full group conversation on June 3rd. And so that's Thursday, right after we would approve the budget. And then to have the next meeting then on June 15th. And having spent a couple hours reading through the substance of the federal guidelines, there are a lot of things that you have mentioned that are certainly going to be eligible for that. I was happy to see that even some youth development activities, and in fact also some capital costs related to things like youth development of fields, development of trails, if they're in historically underserved communities, are allowable expenditures. Certainly homeless services. And then the other thing that was noted at the front end is that there are about $700,000 of revenue replacement funds that are allowable under ARP that do balance the budget in a way that maintain a static millage rate. More is available, though. So if you were looking at every source of funds that was underfulfilled in the last year compared to what we would have thought in a non-pandemic environment, you can plug some more in without having to raise sort of new revenue, so to speak. Now, it's important also to recognize that contributes to the dynamic that I mentioned at the bottom of my letter at the front of the budget, which is that in future budget years, we're going to have to align revenues and expenditures, which right now are separate to the tune of about $5 million. So one of the things I noted in the chat is that really as soon as August, we're going to begin that conversation that I think Commissioner Wright really referenced in some of her remarks, which is to say, what are those long-term activities that we either eliminate or winnow in some way. Because, as I know, we're getting, emails from people having received their tax assessments, they're seeing some rise in burden as well. Final thing on that, and then I'll go ahead and bid everyone a good night, is that something that I think would be beneficial for us to see from the tax assessor's office is that proportion of new revenue that's coming from escalation in values and that proportion that's coming from new construction. We are benefiting right now from a lot of new construction. So, when you go from having a downtown parking lot to a downtown 7-story building, that means that you're really generating this whole new corpus of funds, where you're not having to rely on, individual homeowners' reassessments. So that is everything. But thanks, Mayor Pro Tem.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the ARP meeting June 15th, and then we're going to have a hiatus until, right?
So June 3rd, then June 15th, and that's right. We'll have a hiatus until July 20th.
Okay, great. All right. Thanks, everybody, for a great meeting, and look forward to chatting with you on the phone about these proposals as we work towards amending the budget and passing it. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night.